The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting a sterile glow across the polished marble floors of the 47th floor. The emptiness of the executive suite amplified every sound, my mop swishing across the tiles, the distant hum of the city below, the occasional ping of the elevator arriving at a deserted floor. At 2:17 a.m., the building belonged to shadows and secrets. I dragged the mop methodically, my heightened senses picking up the chemical tang of industrial cleaner that would overwhelm ordinary humans. Beneath that, I detected the lingering perfumes of the day staff: bergamot, jasmine, sandalwood, each scent telling its own story of stress, ambition, and fatigue. My fingers tensed around the wooden handle, feeling every groove and imperfection. 200 years of existence, and here I was, Elias Mercer, the last vampire king, disguised as a night janitor. The irony wasn't lost on me. My kind had once ruled from thrones of bone and blood. Now I ruled over trash bins and vacuum cleaners. The night air whispered through the ventilation system, carrying the promise of rain. My skin tingled with the atmospheric change, a sensitivity humans had forgotten how to feel. I paused near the corner office, the CEO's sanctuary, and caught a familiar heartbeat. Someone was working late, very late. Vivian Cross. I could smell her blood from here, rich, complex, with notes of stress hormones and caffeine. My gums ached with an instinct I'd spent decades suppressing. I swallowed hard, feeling the dryness in my throat that never truly went away. I pushed my cart past her door, trying to remain invisible as I had for the 3 years I'd worked here. Invisibility meant safety. For Lila, my half-human daughter asleep at home under Marlene's watchful eye. For the fragile life we'd built. "Excuse me?" Her voice cut through my thoughts, warm and authoritative. I froze, my back to her open door, muscles tensing with the instinct to flee. How had I not heard her approach? "Could I trouble you for some help?" Vivian asked, her heartbeat accelerating slightly. The sound filled my ears like distant thunder. I turned slowly, keeping my eyes downcast, focusing on the expensive Italian leather of her heels rather than meeting her gaze. "Yes, ma'am?" "I've spilled coffee all over these financial reports, and they're due tomorrow for the board meeting." The frustration in her voice barely masked exhaustion. "Is there anything you could do?" I glanced up, careful to maintain the subservient posture expected of the cleaning staff. Vivian Cross stood framed in her doorway, the harsh office lighting softening around her, as if even electricity knew to be gentle with her features. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, but couldn't diminish the intensity of her gaze. "I can try, Miss Cross." I kept my voice deliberately rough, human, unremarkable. She smiled, relief washing over her face. "Thank you. I'm sorry to add to your workload." I followed her, into the office, my senses immediately assaulted by the concentrated essence of her. The small space trapped her scent, a mixture of expensive perfume, stress sweat, and that underlying current of her blood that called to me like a siren song. My fangs pressed painfully against my gums, eager to descend. I clenched my jaw and focused on the coffee-soaked papers spread across her desk. "I'm such an idiot," she muttered, gathering stray papers. 43 years old and still knocking over coffee cups like an intern. I pulled cleaning supplies from my cart, hyper-aware of how close we stood. "Happens to everyone, ma'am." "Vivian," she corrected, offering another tired smile. "After midnight, I think we can drop the formalities." I nodded, not trusting myself to speak as I dabbed at the spreading brown stain with absorbent cloths. The coffee was still warm. My fingers brushed against hers as we both reached for the same document, and I felt her pulse jump at the contact. The coldness of my skin often startled humans. "Your hands are freezing," she remarked, concern rather than suspicion in her voice. "Is the heating not working on the lower floors?" "Poor circulation," I lied, the excuse practiced over centuries. "Always been that way." She studied me with unexpected intensity, her eyes lingering on my face longer than humans typically dared. "Have you worked here long?" "I'm sorry I don't remember your name." "Elias," I offered reluctantly. 3 years, night shift." 3 years? Guilt flashed across her features. I should know the people who keep this place running. The intimacy of the moment, her office, the late hour, the admission of regret, created a dangerous atmosphere. I needed distance. "These documents will need to dry. I have some techniques that might help." I worked silently, using specialized solutions from my cart, aware of her watching me. The weight of her gaze pressed against my skin like physical touch. "You're good at this," she observed, leaning against her desk. The position brought her neck into my line of sight, the delicate blue veins visible beneath pale skin. I looked away. "Practice," I muttered, focusing intently on the task. "What did you do before Cross Industries, Elias?" The question hung in the air. What had I done? Ruled vampire courts in Budapest, witnessed the French Revolution, fought in wars humans had forgotten, watched empires rise and fall like sandcastles against the tide of time. "Odd jobs," I answered, the understatement of several lifetimes. "Nothing worth mentioning." Her phone buzzed, breaking the moment. She glanced at the screen, her expression hardening. Damn it, Conrad. Conrad Vale, the CFO. Even from across the building, I'd sensed something wrong about him. A coldness that went beyond human callousness. My instincts had been screaming warnings since he'd joined the company 6 months ago. "Problems?" I asked, immediately regretting the affioso familiarity. Vivian sighed, rubbing her temples. "Nothing I can't handle. Just board politics and power plays." She glanced at her watch. "God, it's almost 3. You should go home. I've kept you too long." "The documents need another 30 minutes to dry completely," I explained, packing my supplies. "I can come back." She shook her head. "I'll wait. I've got calls to make anyway." She hesitated, then added, "Thank you, Elias. I appreciate the help." I nodded and retreated, pulling my cart into the hallway, fighting the urge to stay, to protect. Something about Conrad Vale's name on her lips had triggered ancient protective instincts I thought long buried. Outside her office, I paused, listening. Vivian was on the phone, her voice tight with controlled anger. "I don't care what he's offering, Conrad. Those acquisition terms violate everything this company stands for. No, I won't reconsider. The board meeting is tomorrow at 10, and my position hasn't changed." She ended the call with a frustrated sigh. I heard her heartbeat accelerate, her breathing pattern change. Something was wrong. I moved away from her door, continuing my rounds, but kept my senses tuned to her office. 20 minutes later, the elevator pinged. At this hour? My muscles tensed as I caught an unfamiliar scent, cologne masking something chemical and wrong. The elevator doors slid open, and Conrad Vale emerged, his expensive suit immaculate despite the hour. He didn't notice me in the shadowed corridor as he strode purposefully toward Vivian's office. There was something predatory in his movements that made my skin crawl. I abandoned my cart and followed silently, keeping to the darkness. Conrad paused outside Vivian's door, withdrew something from his pocket, a small vial, and added its contents to a coffee cup he carried. The liquid inside sizzled faintly, detectable only to my heightened hearing. My body went cold with recognition. The scent, the reaction, I'd encountered it centuries ago in the courts of Europe. Vampire hunters had used similar concoctions. But why would Conrad? He knocked on Vivian's door, his voice transforming into something pleasant and concerned. Vivian? Still burning the midnight oil? I brought peace offerings. I pressed myself against the wall, listening to their exchange. Vivian's initial coldness, Conrad's insistence, the subtle manipulation in his voice as he placed the coffee on her desk. Just try to see it my way, he urged. The acquisition makes financial sense. The human cost is too high, Vivian countered. We'd be shutting down facilities that entire communities depend on. Sometimes progress requires sacrifice. Their voices faded as I wrestled with my options. Intervention meant exposure. Staying hidden meant... I heard the soft clink of the cup being lifted. To compromise, Conrad said smoothly. I moved before conscious thought, supernatural speed carrying me through the doorway. The world slowed to a crawl as I crossed the room. Vivian's lips touching the rim of the cup, the liquid tilting toward her mouth. Conrad's satisfied expression beginning to form. Stop! I knocked the cup from her hand, sending poisoned coffee arcing through the air. It splashed across the carpet in a dark stain. Vivian gasped. Conrad's face contorted with rage. What the hell? Vivian demanded, jumping back from the spill. Conrad recovered quickly, his expression shifting to concerned confusion. Your janitor just assaulted you, Vivian. He put something in your drink, I said, my voice dropping its human affectation, revealing the authority that had once commanded armies of the night. Conrad's eyes narrowed, recognition flickering in their depths. This man is clearly disturbed. Vivian looked between us, confusion evident on her face. Elias, what's going on? Check the coffee, I insisted. It's been poisoned. Conrad laughed, the sound hollow and practiced. This is absurd. I'm calling security. He reached for the phone on Vivian's desk, but I moved faster, my hand closing around his wrist. He winced at my strength, another flicker of recognition crossing his features. You know what I am, I whispered, too low for Vivian to hear. His lips curled into a snarl. Your kind should have died out long ago. Vivian stepped forward. Both of you, stop this right now. Conrad, what is he talking about? Conrad wrenched his arm free with surprising strength. He's delusional, Vivian, probably on drugs. This is exactly why I've been pushing for stricter background checks on all employees. I could smell Vivian's fear now, her confusion. She was backing away from both of us, reaching for her cell phone. I'm calling security. Conrad moved with inhuman speed, knocking the phone from her hand and shoving her against the wall. His fingers closed around her throat. I tried to make this look natural, he hissed, his facade crumbling. A heart attack. Clean. But you forced my hand. Vivian struggled, her eyes wide with terror as Conrad's grip tightened. I lunged forward, tearing him away from her and throwing him across the room. He crashed into the bookshelf, but recovered with unnatural quickness, confirming my suspicions. He wasn't entirely human. Vivian, run! I shouted, positioning myself between them. Conrad laughed, his eyes glinting with malice. She has nowhere to go. The building is secured. My people are in place. Vivian gasped for air, her hand at her bruised throat. Conrad? Why? The acquisition? It was never about the acquisition, he sneered. It's about what lies beneath the Siberian facility, what your father found and buried there. Understanding dawned on her face. The excavation site? That was just a mineral deposit. Don't play dumb, Conrad snarled. Your father found one of the ancient bloodlines. My masters want what was sealed there. He lunged at her again, but I intercepted, the impact of our bodies cracking the glass of the windows behind us. We grappled, his strength confirming my worst fears. He was a dhampir, a half-vampire, serving one of the rival bloodlines I thought extinct. Vivian scrambled for the door, but Conrad broke free and moved to intercept her, producing a blade that gleamed with familiar enchantments, a vampire killer's weapon. Time slowed. Vivian's heartbeat thundered in my ears, the blade arced toward her chest. I had one option, one forbidden, irrevocable choice. I moved with all my ancient speed, placing myself in the blade's path. The enchanted metal sliced through my shoulder, burning like holy fire. I roared in pain, my true nature revealing itself, fangs descending, eyes shifting to crimson. Conrad stumbled back, momentarily shocked by my sacrifice. Vivian stared at me, at my transformed face, horror and confusion warring in her expression. "What are you?" she whispered. Conrad recovered, raising the blade again. "He's an abomination, the last of the old kings, and now he'll die with you." He lunged. I knew I couldn't stop him in my wounded state. The enchanted blade had weakened me, the magic burning through my veins like poison. Vivian would die unless I made my choice. With supernatural speed, I grabbed Vivian and sank my fangs into her neck. Her blood flooded my mouth, rich, powerful, intoxicating. But I wasn't feeding. I was changing her, protecting her the only way I could. My venom entered her bloodstream, beginning a transformation that would make her impervious to Conrad's blade. She gasped, her body stiffening against mine as the venom spread. Conrad howled in rage, charging forward. I released Vivian, who collapsed to the floor, the transformation already beginning to alter her cellular structure. I turned to face Conrad, my wound partially healed by Vivian's blood. "You've broken the covenant," Conrad spat. "The council will hunt you for this." "There is no council anymore," I growled, circling him. "There is only power and those too weak to seek it." We clashed again, supernatural strength splintering furniture and cracking walls. Security alarms began to wail as the violence triggered motion sensors. Conrad glanced toward the door, realizing his time was limited. "This isn't over," he hissed, backing toward the window. "She's marked now. They'll all come for her." Before I could stop him, he crashed through the glass, disappearing into the night. I rushed to Vivian's side, cradling her convulsing body. The transformation was violent. It always was. Her eyes flew open, pupils dilated with shock and pain. "What did you do to me?" she gasped, her voice barely audible over the alarms. I heard footsteps, security guards responding to the alarms. In moments they would arrive, finding a destroyed office, a transformed CEO, and a janitor with blood on his lips. "I saved your life," I whispered, the weight of centuries in my voice. "And damned us both." The security team burst through the door, weapons drawn. They took in the scene, the destruction, Vivian on the floor, blood on her neck, me kneeling beside her with inhuman eyes and blood-stained mouth. "Get away from her!" one shouted, training his gun on me. Vivian's body arched in pain as the transformation accelerated. "It burns," she whimpered. "Elias, it burns." "What did you do to Miss Cross?" demanded the head of security, advancing cautiously. How could I explain? That I'd violated the most sacred law of my kind, that I'd given her the dark gift without consent to save her from a greater evil. "He attacked me," Vivian gasped, confusion and pain making her lash out. "He bit me?" The words hit me like physical blows. Of course she would think that. What else could she think? On the ground! Hands where I can see them! The guards shouted, moving to surround me. I could have fled, could have moved faster than their eyes could track. But that would mean leaving Vivian alone through the agony of transformation, vulnerable to Conrad's return. I raised my hands slowly, my eyes never leaving Vivian's. "I'm sorry," I whispered, as the guards forced me to the ground. I had no choice. As they handcuffed me, restraints that could never truly hold me, I watched Vivian's eyes change, the first physical sign of her transformation. Horror dawned on her face as she began to understand what was happening to her. "What am I becoming?" she asked, her voice breaking with the first realization of what I had done to her. But before I could answer, the doors burst open and a medical team rushed in, summoned by someone in the chaos. "Step back from the patient," a paramedic shouted, pushing past the security guards who still had me pinned to the floor. I could have broken free in an instant, but I remained still, watching as they surrounded Vivian. Her body convulsed, the venom of my bite coursing through her veins, beginning the irreversible transformation. The security guards yanked me to my feet, their human strength laughable against what I could truly withstand. "What did you give her?" demanded a paramedic, mistaking the symptoms for a drug reaction. I said nothing. What could I say? That I'd just turned the CEO of Cross Industries into a vampire to save her from a worse fate? They loaded Vivian onto a stretcher. Her eyes found mine across the room, confused, accusing, afraid. The brilliant amber brown was now threaded with crimson, the first visible sign of what she was becoming. I could feel her consciousness slipping between human pain and vampire awakening. "Elias," she whispered, her voice carrying to me despite the commotion. Then her eyes rolled back, and she went limp. "She's crashing," someone yelled. No, she wasn't dying. She was transforming. And I needed to be there when she woke to a world she no longer understood. "I need to go with her," I said, struggling against the guards for the first time. "You're not going anywhere except jail," the head of security growled, tightening his grip. "Assaulting Ms. Cross? You're finished." As they dragged me toward the elevators, I caught sight of Conrad in the hallway, watching from a distance. His face betrayed nothing, but I knew he was calculating, adapting his plans. He'd failed to kill Vivian, but now he had something perhaps more valuable. Me, exposed and vulnerable, separated from my daughter, Lila. The thought of her waiting at home sent ice through my veins. "I need to make a phone call," I said as they shoved me into the elevator. "My daughter. Save it for the police," one guard snapped. The elevator doors closed, and I made my decision. I couldn't afford to play human any longer, not with Lila unprotected and Vivian transforming without guidance. I waited until we reached the parking garage, away from witnesses. Then I moved, faster than human eyes could track. The guards' grips loosened in confusion as I simply wasn't there anymore. Their shouts echoed through the concrete structure as I vanished into the shadows. I needed to get to Marlene's apartment first. Needed to make sure Lila was safe before Conrad's people found her. The media storm hit before I even reached Marlene's building. My phone buzzed with notifications. Breaking news alerts about an attack on Vivian Cross by a deranged maintenance worker. Security footage of me being led away in handcuffs played on the lobby television as I slipped past the night doorman. I knocked on Marlene's door, my heart pounding. Each second felt like an eternity until I heard the chain sliding back. "Elias?" Marlene's eyes widened, taking in my disheveled appearance. "My God, you're on the news. They're saying you... I need to take Lila home. Now." My voice was tight, controlled. Is she asleep? Marlene hesitated, her hand still on the door. The police called here looking for you. What's going on? Please, Marlene. I can't explain right now, but Lila isn't safe. Something in my eyes must have convinced her. She stepped back, letting me in. Daddy? Lila appeared in the hallway, rubbing sleep from her eyes. At 12, she was already showing signs of her vampire heritage. The preternatural grace, the heightened senses. But she was still so vulnerable, so human in many ways. I knelt down, pulling her into a tight embrace. We need to go home, sweetheart. But it's late, and you smell like... She pulled back, her nose wrinkling. Her eyes widened as she detected the blood. What happened? I'll explain at home. I looked up at Marlene, who stood watching us with concern. Thank you for everything, but we won't be coming back for a while. Marlene's weathered face creased with worry. Elias, if you're in trouble, the less you know, the safer you are. I squeezed her hand. Forget you saw me tonight. We slipped out the back entrance of the building, avoiding the security cameras. Lila was silent as we walked briskly through back alleys, her small hand clutching mine. Are we running away? She finally asked, her voice small. I stopped, kneeling to look her in the eyes. No, sweetheart, but things are going to change. I did something tonight, something I had to do. People won't understand. Like vampire stuff? She whispered. I nodded. Like vampire stuff. Is it because of the lady? The one whose picture you keep? My chest tightened. Of course she'd found the photograph I'd kept of Vivian, the one I'd cut from a business magazine and hidden in my drawer. Yes, her name is Vivian, and she was in danger. Did you save her? The question hung in the air. Had I saved her? Or had I damned her to an existence she never chose? I tried, I said finally. But now we both need to disappear for a while. When we reached our apartment, I moved quickly, gathering essentials while Lila watched from the doorway of her bedroom. Pack only what you need, sweetheart. Clothes, your favorite book, your mother's locket. Where are we going? Somewhere safe. I paused, hearing footsteps on the stairs. Too heavy, too purposeful to be a neighbor. Quickly now. We were halfway out the fire escape when our front door splintered inward. I pushed Lila behind me as two men entered. Not police, but something worse. Vampires from Conrad's faction. The king plays at being a janitor, one sneered, his fangs gleaming. How the mighty have fallen. Leave, I said, my voice dropping to the commanding tone I hadn't used in decades. This is between Vale and me. Not anymore. Not with what you did to the cross woman. He stepped closer. The council wants you both. Breaking the consent law, that's execution, Your Majesty. Lila whimpered behind me, and something ancient and terrible rose within me. The father receded. The king emerged. You will not touch my daughter, I said, my voice resonating with power. And you will tell Conrad that if he comes near my family again, I will remind him why my bloodline ruled for centuries. I moved before they could react, my speed and strength far beyond theirs. These were young vampires, turned perhaps a decade ago. I was ancient, born of the original bloodline. The fight was brief and vicious. I didn't kill them. Killing would only bring more attention. But when I finished, they wouldn't be reporting back to Conrad anytime soon. Daddy? Lila's voice trembled as she stared at me, at the blood on my hands. It's okay, I said, though we both knew it wasn't. We need to go now. Vivian woke in darkness, her senses overwhelmed. The hospital room's disinfectant burned her nostrils like acid. The beeping of monitors hammered at her eardrums. The sheets against her skin felt like sandpaper. "Ms. Cross, can you hear me?" The doctor's voice boomed like thunder, though he was speaking softly. Vivian winced, covering her ears. "Too loud," she whispered, but even her own voice sounded wrong, richer, more resonant. "I apologize," the doctor said, lowering his voice further. "You've experienced a traumatic event. Do you remember what happened?" Fragments flashed through her mind. Conrad's betrayal, the strange liquid, Elias's inhuman eyes, the burning sensation as his teeth pierced her neck. Then pain, excruciating pain that had rewritten her from the inside out. "I was attacked," she said carefully. "Yes, by a maintenance worker. Security apprehended him, but he escaped police custody. They're searching for him now." Elias. She remembered his last words to her. "I'm sorry. I had no choice." What had he done to her? She tried to sit up, but the movement happened too quickly. One moment she was lying down, the next she was upright, the motion too fluid to be natural. "Careful," the doctor cautioned, stepping back involuntarily. "You're still recovering from—" He trailed off, and Vivian realized he didn't know what to call it. The tests would show nothing they recognized. "When can I leave?" she asked. "We'd like to keep you for observation. Your vitals are unusual. And there's the matter of your statement to the police." Vivian nodded, though her mind was racing. She needed answers, and the only person who could provide them was now a fugitive. "Could I have some water?" she asked, buying time to think. When the doctor left, she slipped out of bed, surprised by how steady she felt. Strong. Too strong. She caught her reflection in the window and froze. Her eyes, normally amber-brown, flashed crimson when she blinked. Her skin was paler, almost luminescent, and when she ran her tongue over her teeth, she felt the sharp points of canines that hadn't been there before. "What am I?" she whispered. But she knew. Deep down, she knew what Elias had done, what she was becoming. A vampire. The word should have seemed ridiculous, a product of fiction, yet it resonated with absolute truth in her transformed body. The door opened, and Conrad stepped in. The sight of him sent a surge of primal rage through her. Her vision sharpened, the world taking on a reddish tint. "Vivian, thank God you're all right." His concern sounded genuine, but beneath it, she detected something else. Fear, calculation. "What did you try to give me?" she asked, her voice dangerously soft. Before Elias intervened. Conrad's heart rate increased. She could hear it, a rapid drumming that called to something hungry inside her. "I don't know what you mean. I found you after the attack. That janitor. Don't lie to me." The words came out as a growl, inhuman and threatening. Conrad took a step back, his hand moving to his pocket. "You're confused. The doctor said you might experience hallucinations from whatever he gave you." But Vivian's new senses caught the lie. She could smell his deception, hear the falsehood in his heartbeat. And beneath it all, a scent that triggered recognition, the same chemical undertone as the liquid he'd tried to force on her. "Get out," she said, fighting the urge to lunge at him. "Get out before I call security." "You need rest," Conrad said, retreating toward the door. "We'll talk when you're thinking clearly." When he was gone, Vivian sank back onto the bed, trembling. Her senses were overwhelmed, her body foreign to her. And beneath it all, a gnawing hunger that she recognized instinctively would not be satisfied by hospital food. She needed to find Elias, needed answers, needed to understand what she had become. 3 days later, I watched from across the street as Vivian left the hospital. The media swarmed her, cameras flashing, reporters shouting questions about her attacker. She wore sunglasses despite the overcast day, and I knew why. The sunlight would be painful to her new eyes. "Is that her?" Lila asked from beside me. We sat in a stolen car with tinted windows, our few possessions packed in the trunk. "Yes," I said. "That's Vivian. She's pretty." Lila studied the woman who had unwittingly changed our lives. "Is she a vampire now too?" "Yes." "Because you bit her?" I closed my eyes briefly. "Yes." "Why?" How could I explain to my daughter that I'd violated our most sacred law? That I'd turned a human without consent? "Someone was trying to hurt her," I said finally. "Something worse than becoming like us." Lila considered this. "Are you going to teach her? Like you teach me?" "If she lets me." We watched as Vivian was escorted to a waiting car, surrounded by security. Her movements were stiff, controlled. She was fighting her new reflexes, trying to appear normal. "She looks scared," Lila observed. "She is. Imagine waking up and everything you knew about yourself has changed. We should help her." I smiled sadly at my daughter's simple solution. "It's complicated, sweetheart. She thinks I attacked her. And there are people looking for us, dangerous people. The Vampire Council? Yes. And Conrad Vale. The bad vampire? He's not a vampire. He works for them." I started the car as Vivian's vehicle pulled away from the curb. "But he wants to be one. That's why he tried to hurt Vivian, to prove his loyalty." We followed at a distance as Vivian's car headed toward her penthouse. The news had been full of speculation about her attack and my disappearance. Security footage of me being led away in handcuffs had played on every channel. My face was on wanted posters. "Armed and dangerous," they called me. They had no idea. "What's our plan?" Lila asked, sounding older than her 12 years. "We need to talk to her, explain what's happening to her body, teach her to control the hunger." And then, I had no answer. The future I'd carefully built for us had crumbled. My job was gone. Our apartment was being watched. The vampire factions were hunting us. And Vivian, the woman I'd secretly watched over for years, now had every reason to hate me. "One step at a time," I said. Vivian's first night home was hell. Every sound in her penthouse was magnified. The hum of the refrigerator, the ticking of clocks, the water running through pipes. The hunger grew worse, a gnawing emptiness that made her hands shake. She'd tried eating, but normal food tasted like ash in her mouth. Water provided no relief. Only one thing would satisfy her, and the thought of it made her sick with self-loathing. Blood. She needed blood. The media camped outside her building called her brave for returning to work so quickly after the assault. They speculated about her relationship with the deranged maintenance worker who had attacked her. Some tabloids even suggested a scandalous affair gone wrong. If only they knew the truth. She paced her living room, fighting the hunger, when her security system chimed. Someone was at her private elevator. Someone who had bypassed the building's security. Vivian tensed, her new instincts flaring. She moved to the security panel and froze when she saw the camera feed. Elias stood in the elevator, a young girl at his side. Her first instinct was to call security. This man had attacked her, had turned her into this. But beneath the anger was desperation. He had answers. He knew what was happening to her. Her finger hovered over the alarm button. Then she pressed "Allow access" instead. The elevator doors opened, and they stepped into her penthouse. Elias, looking nothing like the janitor she'd known, and a girl who couldn't be more than 12, with his same intense eyes. "You shouldn't have come here," Vivian said, her voice shaking. "I could have called the police." "But you didn't," Elias replied softly. "You brought a child to confront the woman you attacked?" She couldn't keep the accusation from her voice. "This is my daughter, Lila." His hand rested protectively on the girl's shoulder. "And I didn't attack you, Vivian. I saved you." "By turning me into a monster?" The word slipped out before she could stop it. The girl, Lila, flinched. "We're not monsters," she said quietly. Shame washed over Vivian. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean—" "You're hungry," Elias interrupted. "The transition is painful without proper feeding. That's why I'm here." He set a small cooler on her coffee table and opened it. Inside were several medical blood bags. "This will help with the immediate need," he said. "It's not as effective as fresh sources, but it will ease the pain." Vivian stared at the blood bags, horrified and tempted in equal measure. "I can't." "You can, and you must. The hunger will only grow worse. Eventually, you'll lose control. When that happens, people get hurt. Because we're dangerous." It wasn't a question. All power is dangerous without control. Elias's voice softened. "Vivian, I know you're angry. You have every right to be. I turned you without consent, the gravest violation in our world. But Conrad was going to kill you. What he tried to give you that night was a neurotoxin developed specifically to kill our kind. It would have liquefied your brain within minutes." "Our kind," she repeated. "So it's true. We're vampires." Lila nodded solemnly. "Daddy's a king. The last king." Elias shot his daughter a warning look. "Lila." "She needs to know," the girl insisted. "The bad vampires want to hurt her because of what you did. She should understand why." Vivian sank onto her couch, the reality of her situation crashing down on her. "Conrad works for vampires?" "He works for a faction that overthrew the old order. My family's order," Elias said carefully. "He's human, but he serves them in exchange for the promise of immortality." "Why would they want to kill me?" "Because you were under my protection, though you didn't know it. Hurting you was a way to draw me out." He hesitated. "And because of what you're building, your clean energy initiative, it threatens their interests." Vivian laughed bitterly. "Solar power threatens vampires. Of course it does. Not all vampires, just the ones who've invested centuries in fossil fuels." Elias pushed the cooler closer to her. "Please, Vivian, you need to feed." The hunger clawed at her insides, making her decision for her. With trembling hands, she took a blood bag and, following Elias's instructions, punctured it with her newly sharp canines. The first taste was revolting, cold, medicinal. Then something shifted, and it became the most exquisite sensation she'd ever experienced. She drank greedily, shame and pleasure warring within her. When she finished, she looked up to find Elias watching her with understanding in his eyes. Not judgment, understanding. "Why were you protecting me?" she asked, wiping her mouth. "Before all this, you said I was under your protection." Elias glanced at his daughter, who had wandered to the window to look at the city lights. "It's complicated. I'm a vampire now. I think I can handle complicated." He sighed. "Your grandfather saved my life during World War II. I swore to protect his bloodline. When I realized who you were, you became a janitor to watch over me?" Disbelief colored her voice. "I became invisible," he corrected. "The perfect cover. No one notices the man who cleans up their messes." "Except I noticed you," Vivian said softly. Something flickered in his eyes. Surprise, perhaps even hope. Yes, you did. The moment stretched between them, charged with unspoken things. Then Lila's voice broke the silence. Someone's watching the building, she said, pointing down at the street. Not reporters, they're too still. Elias was at the window in an instant, moving with that unnatural speed that still startled Vivian. His body tensed. Conrad's people, he said grimly. They've found us. How? Vivian asked, joining them at the window. They must have been watching you, hoping I'd make contact. He turned to her, decision made. We need to leave. All of us. Now. I can't just disappear. I have a company to run, responsibilities. You can't run a company if you're dead, he said bluntly. And that's what will happen if Conrad's faction gets to you before you learn to defend yourself. They'll make an example of you. Of both of us. The elevator chimed again, someone overriding the security protocols. Too late, Elias muttered. He pushed Lila toward Vivian. Take her to the emergency stairs. Go to the roof. What about you? Vivian asked, even as she put a protective arm around the girl. Elias's eyes darkened, his posture changing subtly. For the first time, Vivian saw what Lila had meant. Not just a janitor, not just a vampire, but something regal and ancient. I'll buy you time, he said. Go, now. As Vivian pulled Lila toward the emergency exit, the elevator doors opened. Conrad stepped out, flanked by two men with the same predatory grace as Elias. Your Majesty, Conrad said, his voice dripping with mock deference, the council sends its regards. The last thing Vivian saw before the stairwell door closed was Elias standing alone against three adversaries, his body coiled like a spring, ready to defend the daughter he loved and the woman he'd damned to save. Elias lunged first, his supernatural speed turning him into a blur. He collided with Conrad, driving him backward into one of his companions. The third vampire circled, trying to flank him. Elias whirled, caught the attacker's arm, and used his momentum to hurl him into the glass conference table. It shattered with a crystalline explosion. 3 against 1, Elias growled. The council's courage remains as impressive as ever. Conrad recovered quickly, straightening his suit jacket. We're merely the messengers, Your Majesty. The council wishes to express its disappointment with your recent choices. Elias circled warily, keeping all three in his sight. My choices have always been my own. That's what terrifies them. Consorting with humans? Exposing our kind? Conrad's face twisted with disgust. You were once our greatest protector. I still am, Elias said. Just not in the way the council would prefer. One of Conrad's men darted forward. Elias sidestepped, grabbed him by the throat, and slammed him against the wall hard enough to crack the plaster. The vampire slumped to the floor, momentarily stunned. I won't ask again, Elias said. Leave. Now. Conrad smiled, revealing the tips of his fangs. We can't do that. Not without the woman and your daughter. Something ancient and terrible flashed in Elias's eyes. Then you won't leave at all. The fight erupted in earnest. Elias moved with deadly precision, centuries of combat experience evident in every movement. But he was outnumbered, and Conrad's men were skilled. A blow caught him in the ribs, another across his jaw. He tasted blood but kept fighting, determined to buy Vivian and Lila time to reach the roof. Meanwhile, Vivian pulled Lila up the emergency stairs, the girl surprisingly quick despite her fear. My dad, Lila gasped. We can't leave him. He's giving us a chance, Vivian said, though her heart ached at the thought of Elias facing those three alone. We need to take it. They burst onto the rooftop, the night air cold against their flushed skin. Vivian's helicopter sat on the landing pad, but the pilot was nowhere to be seen. "What now?" Lila asked, her voice small. Vivian scanned the rooftop, mind racing. "We need to—" The roof access door flew open. They both jumped, but instead of Conrad or his men, it was Tessa, her face pale with fear. "Miss Cross, thank God. Security called. The building's being breached on multiple floors." "Tessa, listen carefully," Vivian said, gripping her assistant's shoulders. "I need you to take Lila and get out of the building. Use the service elevator to the parking garage." Lila shook her head vehemently. "I'm not leaving without my dad." "Your father is fighting for you," Vivian said, kneeling to meet the girl's eyes. "The best way to help him is to get somewhere safe." "What about you?" Tessa asked. Vivian's jaw set with determination. "I'm going back for Elias." "You can't!" Both Tessa and Lila protested simultaneously. "I won't leave him to face this alone," Vivian said. She pulled out her phone, quickly typing commands. "I've just transferred emergency protocols to your phone, Tessa. It'll get you past security and into a safe house. Go, now." After a moment of hesitation, Tessa nodded, taking Lila's hand. The girl looked back once, tears in her eyes, before allowing herself to be led away. Vivian took a deep breath, then headed back toward the stairs. She paused only to grab the emergency fire axe mounted on the wall. Back in her office, Elias was losing ground. One of Conrad's men lay unconscious, but Conrad and the other vampire were pressing their advantage. Elias's movements were slowing, blood seeping from a wound in his side. "The mighty king," Conrad taunted, "reduced to this, fighting for humans who would destroy us all if they knew the truth." "You know nothing about humans," Elias spat, dodging another attack. "Or about being king." "The council disagrees," Conrad said. "They've already chosen your replacement, someone who understands our true place in the world." "Let me guess," Elias said, circling warily. "You." Conrad's smile was cold. "I'll rule in their name." "You'll be their puppet," Elias countered. Conrad lunged faster than before. Elias barely managed to deflect the blow, staggering backward. The second vampire moved in, and Elias knew he couldn't block both attacks. The stairwell door burst open. Vivian charged in, swinging the fire axe with all her strength. It caught the second vampire in the shoulder. Not a killing blow, but enough to make him howl in pain and stumble back. "Vivian!" Elias shouted. "I told you to run." "I don't take orders well," she replied, yanking the axe free and positioning herself beside him. "Even from kings," Conrad laughed. "How touching. The vampire king and his human queen." Elias and Vivian stood back to back, facing their opponents. "Get out of my building," Vivian said, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Your building?" Conrad's eyes narrowed. "You have no idea what you've stumbled into, Miss Cross. This goes far beyond your corporate empire." "Then enlighten me," she challenged. Conrad glanced at Elias. "She doesn't know, does she? What you really are. What you've done." "She knows enough," Elias said. "Does she know about the pact? About the families who've controlled this city for centuries? Your family, Ms. Cross, has benefited greatly from vampire protection. Your great-grandfather signed the original agreement." Vivian faltered. "What is he talking about?" "Later," Elias said. "If we survive this." Conrad smiled. "Oh, I'm not going to kill you, Miss Cross. Not yet. The council wants to meet the woman who brought down Elias Mercer." "Nobody's bringing me to the council," Elias said, "and nobody's touching Vivian." He moved with sudden ferocity, driving Conrad back. Vivian swung at the injured vampire, keeping him at bay. The fight spilled out of her office and into the executive floor. Security alarms blared, but no guards appeared. Conrad's people had clearly neutralized them. They fought their way toward the elevator banks, Elias protecting Vivian as best he could, while fending off increasingly desperate attacks. Blood stained his janitor's uniform, but determination kept him moving. "The emergency elevator," Vivian gasped. "We can lock it down." They backed toward it, Conrad and his remaining man advancing cautiously now, wary of Elias's renewed strength. "This isn't over," Conrad said. "The council has eyes everywhere. Your daughter won't be safe. Neither will Miss Cross." "You're right about one thing," Elias said, his voice deadly quiet. "This isn't over." The elevator doors opened behind them. Elias pushed Vivian inside, then lunged forward one last time, catching Conrad by surprise. His hand shot out, gripping Conrad's throat with inhuman strength. "Tell the council," Elias whispered. "The king sends his regards." He slammed Conrad into the wall with bone-crushing force, then leapt back into the elevator. The doors closed just as the other vampire charged, his fists hammering uselessly against the metal. Inside, Elias slumped against the wall, breathing heavily. Vivian dropped the axe and caught him before he could slide to the floor. "You're hurt," she said, noting the multiple wounds on his body. "I'll heal," he said. "Where's Lila?" "With Tessa. I sent them to a safe house." She helped him stand, straighter. "What Conrad said about my family..." Elias met her eyes. "It's complicated, and not entirely untrue." The elevator descended rapidly. Vivian punched in a security override, sending them to a sub-basement level few knew existed. "We need to get out of the building," Elias said. "Conrad's people will regroup." "We will," Vivian assured him. "But first, I need answers. All of them." The elevator opened into a secure room lined with servers and monitoring equipment. Vivian helped Elias to a chair, then went to a cabinet and retrieved a first aid kit. "This won't do much for you, I imagine," she said, offering him a bottle of water. He drank gratefully. "It helps. Thank you." "Now talk," she said, sitting across from him. "Everything Conrad said, the council, the pact, my family's involvement." Elias sighed, wincing at the pain in his ribs. "The pact dates back to the 1920s. Vampires and certain human families agreed to mutual protection and benefit. Your great-grandfather was one of the signatories. So my family has known about vampires for generations. Not all members. Only those directly involved in the pact. Your father knew. I don't think he told you before he died." Vivian tried to process this. "And the council?" "Vampire governance. I was their king, not of all vampires, but of the North American faction. I disagreed with their methods. They wanted more control over human affairs. I believed in coexistence, in boundaries." "So they what, deposed you?" Elias's laugh was bitter. "They tried to execute me. I escaped with Lila. We've been hiding ever since. As a janitor in my building. Your building was safe, protected by old magic from the original pact. I never expected to..." He trailed off. "To what?" Vivian pressed. "To care for you," he said simply. It complicated things. Vivian stood, pacing the small room. "And the bite? Was that part of your plan too?" "No," he said firmly. "That was desperation. You were dying. I couldn't let that happen. So you turned me into..." "What am I now, Elias?" "Not a vampire," he said. "The transformation requires more than a bite. You're still human, but changed, enhanced. You'll heal faster, age slower. Your senses will sharpen." Vivian touched her neck where he had bitten her. "And the connection I feel to you? Is that part of the enhancement?" Elias looked away. It's a bond. Temporary for most, but stronger because of who I am. What I am. And if I don't want it? His eyes met hers, filled with centuries of loneliness. It will fade. In time. Vivian moved closer, studying him. The janitor was gone, and in his place sat someone both ancient and vulnerable. And if I do want it? Before he could answer, alarms blared throughout the building. Security monitors flickered to life, showing armed figures entering the lobby. Not Conrad's people, Elias said, tensing. Human security forces. Someone's called in a terrorist threat. Conrad, Vivian realized. He's trying to flush us out. Elias stood, his wounds already healing. We need to go, now. No, Vivian said, her decision crystallizing. No more running. Vivian, this is my company, my building, my life. Her eyes blazed with determination. And apparently, my legacy. I'm done being manipulated by Conrad, by this council, by secrets kept from me for generations. What are you suggesting? The truth, she said. All of it. On my terms. Elias stared at her in disbelief. You want to go public? About vampires? Not exactly. She moved to a computer terminal, fingers flying across the keyboard. But I'm going to expose Conrad and whoever he's working with. Corporate espionage, attempted murder, terrorism. Those are crimes whether you're human or vampire. The council will never allow it. Then they can come out of the shadows and stop me themselves, Vivian said defiantly. I'm calling a press conference. Right now. That's suicide, Elias protested. No, Vivian said, turning to face him fully. It's leverage. Conrad wants me dead and you captured. Let's make that impossible by putting ourselves in the spotlight. Elias considered her words. Slowly, a smile spread across his face. The smile of the king he once was. You would have made a formidable vampire. I make a formidable human, she corrected. Now, are you with me? He nodded. Always. 90 minutes later, the lobby of Cross Tower was filled with reporters and cameras. Security forces had found no evidence of terrorism, but the building remained on high alert. Rumors of an attack on Vivian Cross had spread, creating a media frenzy. Vivian stood at the podium, immaculate in a fresh suit, no sign of the earlier battle visible. Beside her stood Elias, no longer in his janitor's uniform but dressed in clothes borrowed from her executive wardrobe, a transformation that had already set tongues wagging. Thank you all for coming on such short notice, Vivian began. Today, I want to address the events that occurred in this building and the broader conspiracy that has targeted both Cross Industries and me personally. Cameras flashed as she detailed the attack, carefully framing it as corporate espionage led by Conrad Vale, her CFO. She presented evidence of financial irregularities, unauthorized access to secure systems, and the assault itself, captured on security footage, edited to remove any overtly supernatural elements. Mr. Vale represented interests that sought to undermine not just Cross Industries, but the very foundations of fair business and ethical governance in this city. She continued. Interests that have operated in the shadows for too long. Murmurs spread through the crowd. In the back, Elias spotted Conrad, his face tight with fury. Behind him stood two figures Elias recognized immediately, council enforcers watching silently. I am also announcing a new partnership, Vivian said. One that will strengthen Cross Industries and help us combat the kind of corruption Mr. Vale represented. She turned to Elias, extending her hand. He stepped forward, taking it. This is Elias Mercer, she said. Many of you may recognize him as a member of our maintenance staff. What you don't know is that Mr. Mercer is also a security specialist who has been working undercover to help identify the threats against this company. From today, He will be joining our executive team as Chief Security Officer and my personal advisor. The reporters erupted with questions. Elias leaned toward the microphone. "Ms. Cross is being modest," he said, his voice carrying an authority that silenced the room. "She saved my life today, and the life of my daughter. Her courage in the face of those who would abuse power for personal gain represents the best of what humanity." He paused, the word heavy with meaning only a few would understand. "Has to offer." Conrad pushed forward through the crowd. "This is absurd. Mercer is a janitor. He's manipulating you all." Security moved to intercept him, but Vivian raised a hand. "Mr. Vale, how convenient that you've joined us. Perhaps you'd like to explain to these reporters why you led an armed assault on my office today." Conrad's eyes darted between Vivian and Elias, then to the council enforcers at the back of the room. Finding no support, he snarled, "This isn't over." "Actually, it is," said a new voice. Tessa emerged from the side entrance, Lila beside her. Behind them walked Marlene Bishop and two distinguished-looking individuals Elias recognized with shock. Council elders. The female elder stepped forward. "Conrad Vale, you have violated our most sacred laws. The council disavows your actions and those who supported you." The crowd watched in confusion as Conrad's face drained of color. The elder turned to Vivian and Elias, inclining her head slightly, a gesture of respect that made Elias's breath catch. "Ms. Cross, Mr. Mercer," she said formally, "the organization I represent wishes to express its regret for this unfortunate situation. We would be honored to discuss a renewal of old arrangements at your convenience." It was as close to a public apology as the council had ever given. Elias nodded, understanding the monumental shift this represented. Vivian, quick to adapt, smiled graciously. "We would welcome such a discussion. Transparent partnerships benefit everyone." Security led Conrad away, his threats fading as the council enforcers fell in behind him, his fate sealed by powers beyond human justice. The press conference continued, Vivian masterfully controlling the narrative. By the time it ended, the story had been shaped. Corporate espionage thwarted, a hidden hero revealed, Cross Industries stronger than ever. As the crowd dispersed, Lila ran to Elias, throwing her arms around him. "Dad, you're okay." He held her tight, kissing the top of her head. Thanks to Ms. Cross. Vivian joined them, her public persona softening. "Are you all right, Lila?" The girl nodded. "Tessa took good care of me, and then Marlene found us with those important people." Marlene approached, looking both relieved and amused. "When council elders show up at your door asking for a child, it's generally wise to cooperate." "Thank you," Elias said sincerely. "For everything." The lobby emptied gradually, security establishing a new perimeter. The elders had disappeared as mysteriously as they had arrived, but their message was clear. Elias was no longer an outcast. Later that evening, Vivian stood at the window of her penthouse, looking out over the city. Lights twinkled below, humans going about their lives, unaware of the supernatural currents that had shaped their world for centuries. She heard Elias approach before she saw him, her enhanced senses already adapting. "Lila's asleep," he said. "It's been a long day for her." "For all of us," Vivian agreed. He stood beside her, their reflections ghostly in the glass. "What you did today was either the bravest or most reckless thing I've ever witnessed." "Probably both," she admitted. "But it worked. Conrad's finished. The council has backed down, and you're no longer hiding." "No," he agreed. "No more hiding." She turned to face him. "So what happens now? With us? With this?" She touched the marks on her neck, nearly healed but still visible to her enhanced vision. Elias reached out slowly, giving her time to pull away. When she didn't, his fingers traced the line of her jaw. "That depends on you. The bond can be broken if that's what you want. And if it isn't?" His eyes, ancient and new at once, searched hers. "Then we have time to discover what it might become. I've lived for centuries, Vivian, but I've never met anyone like you. A stubborn CEO who refuses to die when she's supposed to?" His smile was tender. "A woman who faces the darkness and demands it step into the light." She moved closer, the pull between them undeniable now. "I still have questions about the pact, my family's involvement, what I'm becoming. And I'll answer everyone," he promised. "We have time." "Do we?" she asked. "The Council, Conrad's allies, they won't just disappear." "No," he agreed. "But we're stronger together. And now we have allies of our own." Vivian's hand found his, their fingers intertwining. Outside, the city continued its nighttime rhythm, unaware that its ancient protector had emerged from the shadows. That power had shifted. That human and vampire worlds had drawn closer together. "I never thought I'd say this to anyone again," Elias said softly, "but I'm not afraid of tomorrow anymore." Vivian leaned into him, feeling the steady beat of his heart against hers. The bite on her neck pulsed gently, a reminder of the bond they shared. Not a curse or a blessing, but a choice. Her choice. "Neither am I," she whispered. In the bedroom down the hall, Lila slept peacefully for the first time in years, no longer a fugitive. In boardrooms across the city, powerful figures whispered about the return of the Vampire King and his unlikely human ally. And in the shadows, the council retreated to reconsider a world where old boundaries were blurring. But in the penthouse above the city, Vivian and Elias stood together in the quiet, feeling the weight of centuries and the promise of tomorrow. The night embraced them, no longer a time of hiding, but a beginning. The first of many they would share, mortal and immortal, bound by choice rather than fate. The bite on Vivian's neck tingled one last time, then settled into a gentle warmth that spread through her body. Not a mark of possession, but a connection freely accepted. Between a king who had lost his crown and a queen who had found her power.